Chapter 14. Adam paced back and forth in front of the kitchen window. Not 10 minutes ago, he had watched Elle walk inside the barn. She still hadn't returned. Knots of anxiety formed in his belly. He was still processing everything his wife said. How could she believe he felt sorry for her when she was everything he'd ever wanted in a woman? Yes, Adam admitted he wanted to help Elle save her late father's ranch when he married her, but she also helped him so that he could inherit his great-grandfather's ranch. To his way of thinking, they had helped each other. What was going on in that beautiful but anxious mind of hers that would make her think he pitied her? Elle may have wanted some time alone, but seeing her so upset tonight made him worry. He couldn't wait any longer. Pulling on his jacket and boots, he decided it was time to find Elle and finish their conversation. He hurried out the door, the heavy rain making it hard to see. The yard light by the barn flickered, and he could barely see it through the downpour. Pulling the hood of his jacket over his head, he trudged through the mud. Opening the barn door, he stopped suddenly. The pounding of horse hooves in the distance caught his attention. Pivoting, Adam ran toward the yard lights that surrounded the racetrack. As he dashed around the corner, he caught sight of Justice running around the racetrack. There was no rider on the horse's back. The racehorse ran fast, seemingly without any injuries. But where was Elle? Worried, Adam sprinted onward to get a better view of the track. His heart knotted in his chest as he ran. Suddenly, he saw her. His wife lay broken and twisted in the mud. His heart flipped upwards, punching at the base of his throat. Adam rushed towards her, panic flooding him. What if she was badly hurt, or worse? He should have stopped her. He should have done everything in his power to keep her safe. Yet he'd let her go out into the pouring rain. If she was hurt, he would never forgive himself. Finally, he reached her side. Elle, sweetheart, talk to me. Adam knelt by her side, his hand touching her face. She lay motionless, not responding to his touch. Her eyes were closed, with not so much as a flicker as he spoke her name. He placed a finger along her neck, desperate to find a pulse, breathing a sigh of relief when he found a faint heartbeat. Pulling out his phone, Adam dialed 911. They told him not to move her, but to stay with her, and they would be there as fast as possible. He called Jed, asking him to find Elle's horse and bring him home safely. By the time Adam had finished calling his family to let them know what happened, the ambulance drove up. The EMTs gently lifted his wife onto a stretcher and into the ambulance. Adam's hands and legs trembled as he sat beside her and held Elle's hand. He whispered all the things he wanted to say, praying he would still have the chance to say them. After a brief examination, a nurse walked up to him. "We're taking your wife down for an MRI. The doctor will be out in a while to let you know how she's doing." "Thank you." Adam sat in the waiting room, filled with worry. Fear gripped him as he thought of what the doctor would find. He worried about the seriousness of Elle's condition. "Hey, Adam." Jack walked into the waiting room with Adam's mother at his side. Eliza hugged her son before asking, "How is she?" "The doctor is doing tests, but she is still unconscious. Elle was just lying there, so still and pale. I'm real worried." Adam rubbed the back of his neck as he paced a short path along the waiting room floor. "I'm so sorry, son. We're here for you, whatever you need." His mother held his hand, a comforting gesture. "I know, Mom, and I'm grateful. Thanks for coming. You know we wouldn't be anywhere else, Adam. Our family sticks together through thick and thin." Jack squeezed his shoulder before finding a comfortable chair to sit in. "Thanks, Jack." Adam sat beside them, fidgeting, until finally the doctor walked through the open door. "Adam Stevenson?" "Yes." Adam stood up, his legs unsteady. "I have the test results from your wife's scan. The doctor's face revealed nothing as he delivered the news. We've determined she has mild head trauma, cracked ribs, and a fractured arm. The last two will heal within a few weeks, but head trauma can be unpredictable. You can visit her quietly, but don't expect her to respond to you. The doctor studied him for a moment before he continued. You say she was riding her racehorse? Yes, she was. Then I'd have to say your wife is one lucky lady. Her injuries could have been much worse. She's lucky to be alive. As the doctor walked away, for the first time Adam realized how close he'd come to losing Elle. I need to see her. Adam turned, speaking quickly to his mum and Jack. Go ahead, Adam. We'll be here when you get back. Adam found a nurse who led him to his wife's room. His legs went weak at the sight of her still form lying on the bed. Elle was so pale and lifeless, so unlike the energetic and feisty woman he knew and loved. As he sat beside the bed, he wrapped both hands around her cold one. I'm so sorry, Elle. I never meant for this to happen. He kissed the top of her hand. I should have stopped you from running outside in the rain. I knew how upset you were and should have gone after you. It's my fault that you're lying here, hurt and broken. Tears welled up in Adam's eyes, and he whispered, Please talk to me, sweetheart. I need you, in all your feisty and sometimes stubborn ways, to come back to me. Nothing is the same without you. Adam whispered to her. But Elle simply lay on the bed, unblinking and motionless. The only sound was the steady beat of the heart monitor. Memories spun around in his head, working with Elle at her dad's ranch, and how she'd made him do most of the grunge work made him smile. Even though he didn't like mucking out stalls, he liked it that his wife had a lot of spunk. That Elle had agreed to this fake marriage was nothing short of a surprise to him. She'd been beautiful on their wedding day. He had surprised her with the honeymoon trip of the Royal Ascot horse race, knowing she'd appreciate it. But Elle was the one who surprised him with her excitement for life. She made him come alive. Giving her that racehorse had been a fun surprise, her tears of happiness making it worth every penny. There were so many good memories with Elle, and her compassion for Bree and others neared the top of his list. She did so much for others around her. She was one of those people who gave, not expecting anything in return. He'd become jaded from the women he had dated and some of his other connections. It made him really grateful for who Elle was. She was real and honest about who she was and what she wanted. Her compassion and generous spirit made him want to be a better man. He wanted to be a better husband and wanted to make their marriage real and lasting. The door to the hospital room opened, and Bella walked toward Elle's bedside. A sliver of morning sunlight slipped through the blinds in the hospital window. I came as soon as I could. Bella sat on the other side of the bed. Elle is so pale and still. Yes, she is. The doctor doesn't know how long it will be before she wakes up, so we'll just need to wait. Bella held her best friend's other hand between hers. Come on, Elle, come back to us. They sat in silence for a few minutes. You say she went riding in the rain and fell off Justice? Bella asked. Yeah, she did. That's so unlike Elle. She must not have been thinking straight. Bella knew her best friend well. We had an argument. Elle told me she was going to visit the horses and that I wasn't to follow her. Adam stood and paced. But I should have gone after her. It's my fault she's lying here hurt. You didn't know she would decide to ride. It's not your fault, Adam. Bella turned to him. Elle must be more upset about her stepmother selling her late father's ranch than I realized. What? Adam spun around, facing Bella. I didn't know that. From the beginning, that's all Elle ever wanted, was her late father's ranch. He stopped and slipped on his jacket. I need to go. Will you text or call me if she wakes up? Adam put his jacket on and slipped his phone in his pocket. Yes, of course I will, Adam. Bella looked at him as if he'd taken leave of his senses. I'll be back as soon as I can. Adam hurried out of the hospital, determined to do what he could to make things right for Elle. It wasn't until late evening that Adam arrived back at the hospital. He was tired but satisfied. His mum and Jack had gone home, but Bella had stayed by Elle's side. Seeing Adam, she got up. Elle hasn't woken up yet, but I'm confident she will soon. I'm headed home for some rest. Text me if she wakes up, okay? Adam nodded, glancing quickly at Bella before turning back to his wife. He sat by her bedside once again. After watching his wife and seeing no movement, he decided to take a short nap. Much later, when he woke up, a few rays of sunshine drifted in through the window. Adam sat up, stretched, and looked at Elle. He reached for her hand and held it for the longest time, just staring at her. Suddenly, it was like a dam burst inside him. Elle, sweetheart, please come back to me, he whispered, his grip tightening on her hand. You need to come back from wherever you are. Bella needs you. Joanna needs you. I need you. A tear ran down his cheek as he stared at his wife, her once laughing face now pale and unmoving. You might not believe it, but you are the best thing that's ever happened to me, Elle. The last thing I feel for you is charity or pity. You are beautiful to me, just as you are. I love your smile. I love your laugh. I even love your sass. I finally realize how much I love you, just when it's too late. Adam took a deep breath and wiped the tears that flowed unheeded down his cheeks. I love you, Elle. A low moan filled the room, and his voice cracked. But I'm no good for you. You know why? You nearly died riding that racehorse. I would never have given that animal to you if I would have known it would hurt you. His voice was husky and raw. The worst part is that I couldn't protect you. The truth is, all the people I love end up dying. First, my dad died from a heart attack. Maybe if he wouldn't have had so much stress, he wouldn't have died so young. I should have done something to help relieve some of his anxiety. Then your father died in that accident. Elle, you've got to understand that I tried to stop your dad from going out in the rain that night. I told him we should stay at the hotel because the weather report said it was freezing rain and the roads were already turning to ice. But, for some reason, it didn't stop your father from driving that night. He said he'd be careful, but he needed to get home to his girls. Adam's voice grew hoarse, and he gripped her hand like it was his lifeline. I followed him, hoping to keep some sort of watch over him, but it was too late. His truck swerved off that icy road and into a ravine. I ran down the hill to see if I could help him, but he lay there bleeding and broken. His last words to me were, "Tell Elle I'm sorry and I love her." A gentle squeeze on his hand caused Adam to look up. That's what you came to tell me at my father's funeral, Adam. Elle's voice was raspy. I didn't realize you tried to stop my father from driving that night. I'm so sorry I was angry with you for so long. Will you forgive me, Adam? Adam's heart shuddered away in his ears at the sound of her voice. He expelled a long sigh of relief, and for a long moment just stared at her. He could hardly believe his eyes. His wife was awake and talking to him. Yes, I of course I forgive you, Elle. All that matters now is that you're okay. Adam embraced her, his arms gentle, like she was made of glass. Did you mean it when you said you loved me, Adam? Her eyes widened as they searched his. Yes, I did, with all my heart. Adam leaned over her, taking in the sweep of her eyelashes and the curve of her mouth. He bent his head to kiss her. He had barely touched his lips to hers when a nurse opened the door to check on her patient. Finding Al awake, the nurse pressed the button to call for the doctor. The next hour was busy with the doctors checking on Al. By the time they'd finished, Bella had arrived, wanting to talk with her best friend. "I'll leave the two of you to talk." Adam kissed Al on the cheek and whispered, "This is for you, Al." He placed an envelope in her hand. Squeezing her hand gently, he walked out of his wife's hospital room. As Adam drove back to the ranch, he couldn't stop thinking about Al. He loved her, but he'd almost lost her. She had almost died because of him. Throughout his life, those that he loved, he couldn't protect. People he loved and who loved him ended up dying. Adam couldn't do that to Al. He wouldn't do that to the woman he'd come to adore. He needed to be strong. He needed to remind himself that Al was better off, safer, without him in her life. He loved his wife enough to let her go. After 5 days in the hospital, Al was released to go home. Her ribs hurt and her arm was in a cast, but she was thankful to be alive. Bella picked her up and drove her back to the ranch. Al wondered why she hadn't seen Adam since he handed her the envelope and left. Adam hadn't returned to the hospital, even though his mum and brothers had stopped by almost every day. When she'd asked Jack why Adam didn't visit, he told her there'd been a bit of a crisis with the software and management team. Adam had been working long hours and barely sleeping, trying to fix things. Al had just nodded, but she was worried about him. Something about Adam's actions and words didn't add up. Memories of what he told her as she lay in the hospital went round and round in her head. He loved her, but Adam thought he wasn't any good for her. Her husband believed because he couldn't protect the people he loved, they were better off without him. When Adam handed her the envelope that day, she didn't realize how it would change her life. He had given her the title deed to her father's ranch. He had given her a new freedom. He had given back her dream. It was too much. She didn't feel right about accepting it. As Al stepped out of the car, she knew what she needed to do. "Are you okay, Al?" Bella walked toward her and hugged her close. "Yes, I feel good, Bella." It felt like a breath of fresh air being home at last. "I'll leave you then, but call me if you need anything, right?" Bella turned just before she got to her truck, her eyes staring pointedly at Al, waiting for her reply. "I will, I promise." Al chuckled at her friend's tendency to mother her. After Bella left, Al walked toward the barn and horse pasture. She was about to do one of the hardest things she'd ever done, but she needed to do it. Al dialed the number of a horse owner she had met who loved horse racing. After she had come to an agreement with him, she went to rest her arms on the fence to watch Justice as he roamed and romped in the pasture. It was a pleasure to look at him. She desperately wanted to ride him, but she needed to wait 3 months before getting back on a horse. After a while, a truck and trailer drove onto the yard. Just as Al was walking over to meet him, Adam's car drove onto the yard. Her husband got out and hurried towards her. "Hey there, Al." Adam stood close to her, his hands in his pockets. Seeing the older man get out of his vehicle, he asked, "What is Mr. Crenshaw doing here?" "I called him. I've decided to sell Justice." Unbidden, tears filled her eyes. She hastily wiped them away. "Why would you do that, Al? You love that horse." Adam put a gentle hand under her chin, his eyes searching hers. "Well, you don't feel like I'm safe riding Justice, especially since the accident, and I want you to know that Justice or any other horse is not as important to me as you are, Adam. It just seemed like this was the only way I could show you that." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she looked up at Adam. "I love you more than anything, Adam. I really do." Taking a step towards her, Adam pulled her close into a tight embrace. "Oh, Al, I love you too, sweetheart. I tried to stay away from you, but I just couldn't." He breathed a ragged breath and pulled back so he could look at her. "I'm so afraid I won't be able to protect you. You've already suffered because of me." A vein popped in Adam's neck, and his voice cracked. His finger ran the length of the cast on her arm. The despair she saw in his eyes tore at her soul. "No, that's not true. None of this was your fault, Adam. I chose to ride justice in the rain, and I fell off. It's my own fault," Al went on. "Both of our father's deaths are not your fault either. I've blamed myself for so many years, I don't know how to forgive myself and accept that I'm not to blame." Adam took a pained breath, his haunted eyes holding hers. "We'll do this together, okay, Adam?" A deep sigh seemed to resonate deep within him before he spoke. "All right, we will get through this together." "But I meant it when I said that justice isn't as important to me as you are, Adam." Al's eyes shimmered with tears. "So if you don't want me to ride anymore, I won't. I will choose to give it up because I love you more than any of those dreams I have for myself." Al reached up to touch her husband's cheek, pouring her heart into her words. "That's why I'm selling justice." "Oh, Al, I understand and love your self-sacrifice. It means the world to me." He kissed her hand. "But I don't want you to sell him. I want you to keep the horse you love. And when the doctor says it's okay to ride again, then you should do it." Adam placed his hand over hers. "Are you sure? Because I was also going to use the money from selling my horse to pay you back for giving me the title deed for my dad's ranch." Al still felt that the gift was too much. "Sweetheart, I don't want you to pay me back. I gave that deed to you because I love you, not for any other reason that might be going through that beautiful head of yours." A man coughed in the background. Al stepped away from Adam, heat flooding her cheeks. She'd forgotten about their guest. They hurried to the man and explained their decision not to sell the horse. He was upset at first, but was appeased when they invited him and his family to Justice's next race. Looking back at Adam, Al needed to hear his words again. "You gave the deed to me because you love me, Adam?" "Yes, I did." Adam's tender smile was nearly her undoing. "But if it makes you feel better, why don't you consider the title deed a donation to your horse therapy nonprofit organization?" I never thought of it that way. But I like your first reason better, and I accept your generous gift with overwhelming thanks." She looked over at him, her heart in her eyes. "I'm glad." Adam's eyes took on a seriousness. "But I'd prefer if you didn't live on your dad's ranch. I was rather hoping we could switch the terms of our marriage pact." "What do you mean?" Elle pinched her eyebrows together in confusion until he got down on one knee in front of her. Her eyes widened and she placed one hand over her open mouth. "Elle Jennings Stevenson, I love you with all my heart. Will you do me the honor of marrying me again, this time to become my real wife?" As Adam's blue eyes looked up at her, she noticed a new calmness there, instead of that haunted look that had surrounded him. "Yes, Adam, I will." She placed her hands on both sides of his face and locked her eyes with his, as her love for him nearly overwhelmed her. He stood to his feet and gently placed his hands on her waist, pulling her close. Stepping back, he put his hands on both sides of her face. Leaning downwards, Adam placed his lips gently on hers. Elle savored the sweetness of his kiss. This wonderful man who at first inspired her to anger now inspired her to love so deeply. Adam wrapped his arms around her. Elle met his kiss with so many wonderful emotions rising up on the inside of her. She now looked forward to the future. With Adam at her side, She could do anything. She could hope and dream, knowing he would be there for her. Al made a commitment in that moment that somehow Adam would have the confidence of knowing his wife would always be by his side, too.